Hey, Mike here from Clicked Marketing, and wanted to talk a little bit about AI writers. There's a lot of people asking about them. They're becoming, seems like new ones are popping up every day. They're becoming very popular. And the one question that I see a lot of people have is, are AI writers good enough to produce content for my website? Now, if you don't want to watch the whole video, the short answer is yes, they are, with a little bit of a caveat that it's not as simple as just pushing a button and out pops a 1,500 word article. You do have to work with the AI writer a little bit. You probably are going to have to edit a good bit of the content, but what they can do is help you produce content much faster than if you were just writing from scratch. And with this debate, I see people seem to fall into two camps right now. I see a lot of people who, the first camp is generally people who have barely touched any of these tools or really have not used them at all and just have it in their head that anything produced by the AI writers is trash. You won't get any good content with them. Everything they produce is just garbage and they're useless. The other group of people are people who have spent some time playing with some of these tools and using them and figuring out ways to utilize them to produce the content that they want. And I think what you'll find if you spend some time with some of the, and again, there's a lot of these AI writers out there. I'm going to show one that I like to use, but if you spend some time learning how it works, you'll find that it can be an AI writer can be an excellent tool for helping you to produce content faster. It's not going to be a push button solution where you just hit a button and magically, 1,500 words or 2,000 words appear in front of you. That's all perfect. It doesn't work that way, but they are a great tool you can use in your content production. And I'm going to go through here. I'm going to show you the one that I'm using. Now there's a bunch of these tools out there, and it seems like there's new ones popping up every day. This one is called Jarvis.ai. Again, there are other tools out there that are, are are very good. This is just the one that I've been using and that I've found works best for me. And what I'm going to do is show you an example of the kind of content you can produce with one of these AI writers. And what I really want to show is the workflow that I go through. This is what I do to get content that I find is fairly usable, or that I can give to a writer to edit a little bit and touch up a little bit, and we can have something out pretty quickly. Now, again, this is the workflow I use. Other people probably do different things with this tool and get great content, but this is what works for me. And what I do inside, this is the document writer. And what I do is I start with a title. So I was going to write, I was going to write about something else, but I tell you what, let's go with something that's on topic here. So let's start with the title. Can AI writers produce content that is good enough for your website? And I want to copy that real quick. Okay. So we're going to start with the title. And over here, we have a couple options. The only thing I use is the title. So I'm going to put the title in here. Oops, I hit the wrong button. And I don't use the content description or brief. You can put a brief in there. It helps. They say some people say it helps the AI writer to uh, understand what it's writing about. But what I've found is if I use the content brief, it tends to repeat itself a little bit more often. Every time you tell it to write something, it goes back to that content brief, and it will incorporate parts of that into the output. So I don't really particularly like that. There's also an option for selecting a tone of voice. So um, we'll do casual, and I'm not going to use any kind of keywords on this. And the output length, so what it does is you can either do short, medium, or longer content. I've found that the medium works best. You let it write a little bit, you edit anything you need to, and then you let it write a little bit more, and you kind of play along with the AI writer as it's writing the content. Now, Jarvis has something called they call it boss mode, where you can give the AI writer commands, and I use those commands a lot at the beginning as I'm preparing a document when I'm writing a new piece of content inside here. Um, a lot of the other tools have similar options. Like Shortly, I think has some. I know Shortly has something like that. A few of the other ones have options to give the AI writer commands. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell Jarvis to write an introduction for an article titled "Can AI writers produce content that is good enough for your website?" Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to tell it to go through this command and write for me. You aren't always going to get something that you like the first time. So I may repeat this 2 or 3 times until I get an introduction that I'm content with and that I feel is good enough that I can just kind of touch it up a little bit, and I'm happy to use it at that point. So what you do with Jarvis, at this point, you go to the end of the command, and on Apple, we're going to hit Command Return, and it starts writing. Okay. So what it came up with is the question of whether artificial intelligence writers can produce content that's good enough for your website has been raised. We know how the quality of AI writing has grown over time, but it still needs improvement in order to provide a high quality service. This article will answer this question by examining the current state of AI writing technology and offer some ideas on what you should look out for when using AI writers for your business. Pretty good intro. Normally I would probably go through this 2 or 3 times. I would come down here and tell it again, write an introduction for an article titled, and I would repeat this, like I said, 2 or 3 times until I get an introduction that I decide I really want to use, or I'll take those 2 or 3 introductions and I may combine them and use parts of one and parts of the other one as well. So here we got there are many people who think the quality of AI writing is not good enough for their businesses. And sometimes Jarvis, for some reason, puts some extra spaces in there, so I just fix those. There's been a lot of discussion about this in recent years, with some people saying that it will never be able to produce high quality content. This article will examine the current state of AI writing technology and offer some ideas on what you should look for when using AI writers for your business. The question being asked is whether or not they can produce content that is good enough for your website. We know how the quality of AI writing has grown over time, but it still needs some improvement in order to provide high quality service. So again, it's kind of pulling something similar to this. I kind of like this one better. So, but I'm going to get rid of everything here. So we're just going to go with this and get rid of this. So the next step, what I do, once I have an introduction paragraph or 2 paragraphs that I like, is I tell Jarvis to give me an outline for the article. So what I do is I'm going to tell it to write an outline for an article titled, and again, I'm going to use my title. This is why I copied and pasted, because I'm going to use it several times here. And we tell it to go. So it comes up with an outline of kind of headings that you might want to use for an article like this. And what I like to do then is I take this outline. Now, I may do this 2 or 3 times until I get options that I like, and then kind of mix and match and combine those options. But I'm just going to go ahead with what's here right now for this video. What I like to do then is make these headers. So I'll come in here, and I'm just going to I don't want to use the numbers. Okay, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to space these out a little bit. And so far I was using the boss mode, the commands for Jarvis, but there's also the option to just tell Jarvis to write. And there's 2 ways you can do this. One, you can just go ahead and hit this compose button down here. The other thing you can do, and what tends to get the best content, is if you start writing the sentence, and don't write a complete sentence, but just start writing part of a sentence, and then tell Jarvis to take over from there. In this case, though, I'm just going to let Jarvis go ahead and write and see what it comes up with. Okay. And sometimes it'll put some junk in there. So first thing you should know about AI writers is that they are software. Some of these programs include advanced natural language processing algorithms. Some allow them to identify key concepts within sentences and paragraphs. They also use machine learning so they can adapt to different writing styles on the fly. The more articles or content an AI writer writes, let's go ahead and let it keep going, the better it gets at producing quality content. Get rid of this space. One of the most promising words about AI writings is that you can get a lot more content for your money than if you were. I say this is, and again, this is where I would probably edit this. So, one of the more promising benefits of AI writing is that you can get a lot more content for your money than if you were to use humans. Experienced writer might be able to produce around 400 to 500 words per hour, but an AI writer can produce 20,000 words in the same time period. Okay. And I could continue. I could keep telling it to write. The other thing you could do is, I could start with AI writers work by. There it goes. First, identify the key topics that they should cover in an article. Then they conduct research to ensure that they have enough data to produce quality content. Once they're sure of this, they can start writing. They usually start by focusing on key points of, and it goes on and on. So this, I don't love that output. And probably what I'm going to do, AI writing software works by, let's try that. There. Okay. It's good enough. And then what I would do is go down to the next header and kind of do the same thing. I don't know why it started that as a header. And in this particular, so what Jarvis does, let me, okay, fix that. What Jarvis does is as it's writing, it goes back and looks up at the content above it. It'll look at the content up to, I think it's 600 words or 600 characters, and kind of decide from there what it's supposed to write next. So, based on what's up here and based on this heading, it's deciding what needs to go in here. You can tell it to ignore certain spots. So there's commands within Jarvis that you can put in to tell it to not look beyond this point. So if there's something that you find that it keeps kind of like pulling information from up above and not writing what you want it to, you can block it at a certain point so that it's not going back any further in the content. I don't love this. It's not bad. It'd be better if this header was towards the end and not the second header that we're doing. This by now you'll have come to the conclusion. We've barely talked about it, but you get the idea. So you can tell it to keep going then. Okay, and then what it will do sometimes I find when you tell it to keep writing, it starts writing an outline again. I don't know why it does that, but that's what it tends to do. And let's just reset the style. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is choose an AI writer. There are many different options available, so it's best if you try to find one that works well with the topics that you will want to cover. You can also use more than one type of AI writer on your website or blog if you think the quality would benefit from it. Next steps, integrate the coding from your chosen software into your website or blogs. Will require you to have some technical knowledge, but it's also Allows you to use the content that's generated specifically for what people are searching for on your site. For instance, an online store could use AI writers to produce articles with different products and then display them on product pages. This will give people more reasons to stay on your site, and it could also improve the average time they spend looking at each page. After you have integrated the AI writers code on your website, you need to add some initial data. So that, okay, you get the idea. I'm just gonna stop it there. Okay, so what I would do is I would typically go through and I would continue writing for each of these headers, and then when I get to the end, I would tell Jarvis to write a conclusion for an article titled "Can AI writers produce content that is good enough for your website?" And we're going to use the command mode. Okay, so it writes here, and I would put in conclusion or wrapping up or whatever you wanted to call it. AI writers are a great option if you're looking to produce high quality content at an affordable price. With the right software and data, they can create articles that read well and are free of common mistakes. The first step is choosing the correct AI writer for your business needs, then integrating it into your website or blog with some technical knowledge. If all this sounds like too much work, our team of experts would be happy to help you out. Let us know how we can best serve you by filling out. So now it does this once in a while. It'll pull in links and kind of sales call to actions from other sites. The way that this particular writer works, it's based on GPT-3 technology, and it's called OpenAI. OpenAI crawled the internet up to 2019. It hasn't crawled anything since then. So it will sometimes pull stuff like this that it hasn't stored and it's crawled on other websites. Again, none of these AI writers are perfect, and they're gonna do stuff like this. Which is why I said at the beginning, it's not something. This is not something you can just push a button and have content ready to immediately distribute on your website. You're gonna need to do some editing. I don't particularly like this output though overall, so I would probably write this again. Write a conclusion to an article, and I may even not use a title sometimes, to an article about AI writers. Let's see what it does. There you go. Not too bad. So it starts writing tips though, which I don't want. So let's say, despite its drawbacks, AI writers, or despite their drawbacks, AI writers, and let's just tell it to write from there. Can save you a lot of time and money, as good content is often hard to come by. When used correctly, they can produce new content that your audience will enjoy reading about on a regular basis. I pulled this reference, so there. That's almost 700 words in just a few minutes here. And again, normally I was kind of going through this sort of fast. Normally, I would have a little bit of probably more research on the topic that I'm going to write about. I just pulled this topic up as I was doing the video. Um, so normally I'd probably have a little bit more research, and I may have some of the headings in mind that I want to use, or if this is an SEO related uh, post that I'm working on, I probably have headers that I want based on specific keywords. So I probably would fill in that stuff on my own. But I think you can see that this content is it's not the same kind of content you would get from a top end copywriter. Okay, they're going to produce content that is going to be better than you're going to produce with an AI copywriter or an AI writer. However, for a lot of like blog content or even some sales pages and some service pages, I think you can see how using something like this can really speed up your content production. And it's a lot easier for me to give something like this to a writer and ask them to use their skills to dress it up and make it a little better and a little more interactive, or a little more improve it. But compared to writing from scratch, this has just it's sped up our content production quite a bit. And for those of you that like to produce private networks and build out private networks, the one thing that you're always hurting for, and one of the biggest costs for a private network, is producing good content and having writers get out there and write you some decent content. With this, for depending what kind of network you have and what the topics are, you can produce stuff that, I mean, is with some minor edits, you can have some pretty good articles ready to go in 10 to 15 minutes on a lot of topics. Articles that are good enough to publish on a network site like that. With these tools, one thing to keep in mind, there are some topics that you'll have some struggles with. It's not something that I would not use one of these to write something really technical. You could try it, and it may help with some parts of it, but you're probably not going to, from beginning to end, get a great article about something really technical. There's also some topics like anything sexual related. It's not Jarvis, but the OpenAI group has restrictions on anything that is sexually related. So if you're working in the adult niche, you have website about adult toys or something, you're going to have trouble producing content with one of these writers. And again, it's not just Jarvis, but any of them. There are some ways to get around that, and there's some exceptions that can be made on a case-by-case basis, but you have to go to, in the case of Jarvis, you have to go through their support system to get some exceptions made in order to be able to do that. It also doesn't like swearing. It won't swear. It doesn't like you using swear words, so it won't produce anything like that. Other than that, there really there isn't much in the way of restrictions on it. And again, I found personally that this really helps to generate content faster. If you're stuck writing a piece of content and you get that writer's block, or you're just trying to think of some ideas or some ways to rewrite something or to better word something, you can pull out this tool and feed it in there and get some ideas, just to kind of brainstorm some ideas. Sometimes when I'm writing an article, even if I'm not using Jarvis or an AI writer, I will have it generate the outline for me. And I'll do that a couple times to give me some ideas of some headings that I may want to use in the article. You can also feed it some content, and this one has a feature where, like, let's say I don't like this sentence. You can tell it it has this option to rephrase it. So it'll go and, I don't like that. Try again. So there it goes. It'll rewrite it. So you can feed it some content. If there's something that you want to rewrite, or you've written and there's a sentence or two or a paragraph that just doesn't feel quite right, you can feed it in here and rewrite it. It also has an option here. You can highlight something, and it has this option to explain it to a fifth grader. So basically, it kind of dumbs down a part of content. So if I wanted to take, let's say this, I can try this, explain it to a fifth grader, and it'll try to simplify the explanation. I'm not going to use that, but so that's an option on there too. So just to wrap up, I've been really impressed with the type of content I've been able to get out of Jarvis and other AI writers that I've tried. I tried these tools a couple years ago, and they just were not anywhere close to the same place they are today. Today I'm getting fairly usable content out of them, and again, if nothing else, I'm getting content that I can give to a writer and have them edit rather than starting from scratch, which saves a ton of time and a ton of money. They are not a replacement for writers today. If you give me a expert copywriter and top of the line copywriter, they're going to produce better content 999 times out of 1,000 than any AI writer is going to produce right now. But I've been absolutely amazed at some of the content that I have gotten out of this compared to where it was, where these kind of tools were a few years ago. They have progressed a long way, and they're much more than a lot of people out there think that they're basically just article spinners. They're just taking sentences and they're just spinning them, and there's so much more than that. If you play with one of these tools a little bit and really work with it, I think you'll be pretty amazed too at the type of stuff that they can write. And it doesn't just have to be articles. Now this is the long form article writer they have, but they also have a bunch of templates for if you just want to write title tags. You can give it some instructions and tell it to give you 20 outputs. And it will give you 20 different options, and you can either use one of those, or it may give you some ideas, combine a few of them, or just kind of get your thought process moving and gives you some ideas that you can use to write a better title tag. I've used it for writing ad content for both Google ads and Facebook ads. I've also used it for writing headlines for Facebook ads and Google ads. There's a lot of things that you can do with this. It's not just about writing long form content. I've been using it a lot for social media as well. So that's my take on these AI writers. I do think that they're useful. I don't think they completely replace human writers. I think they're a supplement to human writers and can be used to speed up writing processes. This one is, again, Jarvis. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested in it, want to check it out for yourself. I'll leave a link there. But there are other writers too, and it seems like they're popping up every day lately. Jarvis is probably one of the most popular ones right now, and they have a great Facebook group with a bunch of users giving tips and ideas on how to use it. But there's plenty of other tools out there too that do a pretty good job. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.